Please take a seat. I'm told by the tellers we have a quorum. It's after 9 a.m. and we're about to begin, so please take a seat. I know. It's annoying. I'm Angela Harkness, your town moderator, and I want to thank you for coming to this special town meeting here in Westford. The voters here at town meeting constitute the legislative body of our town. You'll be voting on 25 articles today, determining how our tax dollars are spent and deciding on some of the rules we live by as a community. In addition, we have several articles brought to you by citizens, your neighbors, asking you to consider certain things they think will make our community a better place. In a democracy, every vote you cast is important, but here at town meeting, your voice and your vote affect those issues closest to all of us. Anyone registered to vote in Westford may and should participate in town meeting by attending, voting, and speaking to the issues being discussed. We owe special thanks today to our town manager, Jody Ross, and the town staff, who've worked long and hard to be sure we'll all be comfortable and safe as we exercise our right and responsibility to vote. You'll note that the seating generally is at an appropriate social distance, except for those seats that are next to each other to accommodate family members attending together. There are tents along the side to my left for those who need to get out of the elements, and there's a first aid tent available to those in need. Bathrooms are in the Westford Academy building. Head that way towards the dumpsters and you'll see some signage, and also there are porta potties in the back of the field. Once we begin, we'll continue until shortly after noontime, when we'll break for 1 hour and 15 minutes for lunch. There will be no food served on the premises. We request that you go elsewhere for a bite to eat and to freshen up and return at the time designated by the meeting, so that we can continue with the business of the town and hopefully end today. When you arrived and checked in, you were given an orange voter card, like this one. You'll need this card both to vote and to speak at the microphone, so don't lose it, don't leave it in the bathroom, don't use it as a napkin at lunchtime. And when you leave, please be sure to bring it back. If you do lose your card or forget to bring it back, you'll have to check in again so that they can give you another. But don't do that, because we don't want a lot of people having to check in again. If you don't have a card now, it means you haven't checked in, and please go and check in with the tellers. A few rules we'll be following. Please wear your mask at all times except when you're speaking at the microphone or sitting in your seat. If you wish to take it off while you're sitting in your seat, you may. There are 4 microphones, 2 in the center, 1 on the right and 1 on the left, by which any voter can address the meeting after being recognized by the moderator. You can use whatever microphone is closest to you. Please hold up your voter card as you approach the microphone so that I know you are a registered voter and entitled to speak. Unless you're given special permission by the town meeting, non-voters may not address the meeting, and under no circumstances may they vote. Please do not touch or try to adjust the microphone. If you do, we'll have to sanitize it before the next user can use it. So again, you'll be voting by holding up your orange voter cards. When I call for the vote, I'll first ask that those in favor hold up their cards, and after using my photographic memory to see how many people that is, I'll ask you to put it down, and then I'll ask for the nay votes. Please hold your cards up high, especially in the back, so I can be sure to see everyone. We'll be working from the special town meeting booklet. No one told me as moderator I'd get to choose the color for this. It's the best thing I've done so far. So we have these cherry charge colored booklets. If you don't have one and you'd like one, you can raise your hand and one of the tellers will bring it over to you. You should have gotten one as you came in. Also, if you'd like to follow along online instead, on your phone, you can find the motions in black and white at westfordma.gov. There are 2 housekeeping motions before we begin. As indicated previously, non-voters may not address the meeting without your permission. Therefore, I'll ask now that town meeting allow those town employees who are not Westford voters, but who will be participating in our discussion by virtue of their positions, to make presentations or to answer questions. May I have a motion to allow those individuals to address the meeting. Okay. A second, please. All in favor, raise your voter cards. Put them down, please. Any opposed? The motion passes. It's unanimous. Your motion booklet has printed in it the full text of the motions we'll be voting on. In some cases, the descriptions are lengthy and detailed. Rather than requiring your moderator to read every word, may I have a motion to accept the wording as it's printed in the motions booklet for the articles? Is there a second? All in favor, please raise your voter cards. Put them down, please. All opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Finally, please remember, although the sun is shining right now, it is October, and we are outdoors in New England. Without discouraging anyone from speaking or asking a question, I would ask that you speak expeditiously and be careful not to repeat points that have already been made. At the same time, please do feel free to always ask a question about process or procedure. If I don't know the answer, I'll find it out. And if you're confused about anything, please approach the microphone and ask. And with that, please turn to page 4 of your Cherry Charge motions booklet, Article 1. Article 1 is a request to approve unpaid bills from the previous fiscal year. Jody Ross, Town Manager.
Good morning. Whoa. Mark, thank you for lowering that. Well, everybody's awake now, right? So good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to see you here. I am Jody Ross, the Town Manager, and before I speak to this, I just want to say a thank you to all the department heads and the moderator who helped set this up, and especially, and I'm echoing here, especially the Westford Academy. Is there a way to stop that echo? Let's see if this is better. Is this better? A little bit. I want to thank the custodians, Tom Griffin, Al Bennett, Matt Gittner, Dave Allen, Dave Lannon, Chris Selway, and Sound Mark Miller. So thank you all. Maybe we could give them a round of applause. Thank you for taking the ice off the seats this morning for us. So Article 1, we have a motion to dismiss as there are no unpaid bills.
Is there a second to that motion? The motion to dismiss is not debatable. All in favor, please raise your orange voter cards. Put them down, please. All opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Under Article 2, we have a motion that the town reduce certain fiscal year 2021 operating budgets by $515,436. Is there a second? Jody Ross, Town Manager.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Again, these are all reductions in town budgets that we made this year to try to get through the fiscal year with less of a deficit than we had. And if there's any questions to any of these, we're happy to speak, but they're basically reductions in these town budgets and no change to town services.
I'm going to read through the items on this article, and if anybody has a question about any one of them, please raise your orange voter card and say hold, and we'll vote on the ones that don't have a hold on them and then go back to those that have been held. So starting at the top, Treasurer Collector Personal Services, $15,000. Technology Personal Services, $36,000. Town Clerk Personal Services, $17,000. Public Buildings Personal Services, $8,000. Building Department Personal Services, $18,000. Department of Public Works, $65,000. Library Personal Services, $14,000. Debt Services, $125,000. Risk Management, $217,436. There being no holds, we'll take the vote on the motion. All in favor, please raise your orange voter cards. Put them down, please. All opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Under Article 3, we have a request for budget transfers. Jody Ross, Town Manager.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. We have no budget transfers at this time, so we are asking you to dismiss this article.
Is there a second to the motion to dismiss? Motion to dismiss is not debatable. All in favor, please hold up your orange voter cards. Put them down, please. All opposed? The motion passes unanimously. The article to dismiss passes. The motion to dismiss passes unanimously. Under Article 4, we have a motion that the town appropriate from free cash the sum of $55,000 for the purpose of providing funds to address associated issues regarding perchlorate contamination. Is there a second? Are there any questions or discussion about this article? All in favor, please hold up your orange voter cards. Put them down, please. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Under Article 5, we have a motion to appropriate $1,344,152 from Community Preservation Funds to construct a new amenities building at Westford Academy's Trustees Field and to borrow said amount and issue bonds therefor. Is there a second? We have a presentation on this article. Tootie Healy, Chair of the Community Preservation Committee.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the chair of the Community Preservation Committee, and we unanimously voted to support this article because it addresses issues that need to be addressed. It's rather urgent in that we'd be out of compliance if we didn't spend this money, and bonding it will help us do that. Excuse me. So we have support from all committees, selectmen, school, finance, and we hope you will support it. And Ingrid will give it a more detailed description.
Ingrid Nilsson, Director of School Finance.
Good morning. Ingrid Nilsson, 6 Depot Street. 20 years ago, almost to the day, I became chair of the ballot question committee to pass the CPA in Westford. I've also was part of the original Community Preservation Committee and multi-year chair. So in the past 20 years, Westford as a community, when we chose to tax ourselves, which, trust me, is not something I or any of us do lightly, we have benefited. Over those 20 years, at the beginning, we were receiving a 1-to-1 match because there so few communities had passed the CPA, and we could support projects in open space, historic preservation, affordable housing, and recreation. So we passed it in 2001. Over those 20 years, we have funded over $48 million of projects. The highlight and one of the driving forces of the passing of the Community Preservation Act in Westford was to be able to purchase East Boston camps. I think in 2005, many of us were there for that unanimous vote to purchase that property, which really is a crown of Westford. But we have benefited so much more than just that wonderful piece of land using community preservation funds. Overall, we have spent about $24 million for open space, utilizing 51% of our total community preservation funds. We've spent 28% of our funds for historic preservation projects, 11% for affordable housing, and 10% for recreation. It's for recreation that we're here today, to fund the amenities building, building bathroom and concession facilities for this complex. It's not only an allowable use, using community preservation funds for this type of project, but an intended use. One of the tenets of the law that tells us how we can spend is rehabilitation of recreational land, to make capital improvements or repairs to make assets functional for intended use, including improvements to comply with the Americans with Disability Act and all other federal, state, and local building and access codes. It's for those codes that we have to build these facilities. Once we upgraded this complex, starting with the bleachers over there, we no longer were in compliance with the plumbing code, which regulates restrooms. As we see today, this is a community facility utilized in a way maybe we never thought when this complex was built as a site for town meeting. Funding the project with CPA funds will allow this field to continue to serve the community by becoming compliant with our building code and enhance the functional use of the facility. And on that, I will pass it over to Tom Mahana, Chair of the Permanent Town Building Committee.
Thank you, Ingrid. Excuse me. Just want a brief history. So in 2013, as Ingrid mentioned, is when we completed these bleachers. So it's been over 7 years now since the bleachers were done. At the time that the building commissioner at the time issued a certificate of occupancy, it was actually a temporary CO with the idea that the requirements to meet the code of building these improvements to the stadium, you're required to build permanent bathroom facilities. So it was, at the time, it was under the understanding that within a reasonable time frame, we would complete those bathroom facilities. It's now been over 7 years. 2016, we completed a master plan of this entire athletic complex. In the one of the recommendations of that master plan was to build this amenities building with the number of bathrooms that are in the current plan. 2018, we completed the track resurfacing of this complex using CPA funds. February of 2020, we received 9 bids on this project that were within the original budget. The low bidders of the project have been very accommodating and have held their bids since February, with the hopes that this funding will get passed today. If that does happen, they will move forward immediately with construction. So that's been an incredible gesture by these bidders to hold their price for so long. So what's nice is this yellow piece of paper that if you all got when you checked in, gives you the summary of the facility. It's a pretty bare bones 1,700 square foot facility, 8 men, 13 women bathrooms. It's designed with the 50% waiver from the plumbing code. Otherwise, the facility theoretically could have been twice that size. It's a very low maintenance design. A pretty simple building. It also includes a family restroom that would be accessible from the outside during non-high school events. So I wanted just to also, as part of the project too, there'll be site improvements. They'll have to relocate the access road behind, and also change the parking behind the building, because the entire building is going to be built next to that existing concession building, and with windows and access to the rear of it. So everything behind it is going to get moved.
Tom, I need you to wrap it up if you're going to
Thank
give Dan any time. Thank you, sorry.
Good morning. I'm Dan O'Donnell, the Town Finance Director. I'm here to talk about the funding options that were considered for this article. The first option, the Community Preservation Committee, Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, and School Committee all voted unanimously to support funding the WA Amenities Building using CPA funds. Doing so will have no impact on the tax rate. We're estimating conservatively that a 10-year bond at a 4% interest cost will cost about $164,000 per year. Currently, the community preservation has bonding capacity of over $1 million. So if there is another major open space purchase or affordable housing project that an application is presented to the CPA, they do have capacity to bond for additional major projects. The second option, which we have a placeholder in Article 6 under Motion 4, is to issue excluded bonds. So the annual payment for an excluded bond is added onto a tax levy for the life of the loan, meaning taxes are raised. For the median house in Westford valued at $551,000, the estimated tax increase is about $18 per year for 10 years. If the Board of Selectmen decide to borrow for 20 years, that payment would be more like $10 per year. So there are some further logistical issues with the debt exclusion. In addition to needing a 2/3 majority vote at this meeting, it also needs to be approved on the ballot during an election. We've passed a deadline for the presidential election next month, so Board of Selectmen would need to schedule an election at least 35 days, but not more than 90 days from today's date. There's an associated cost of having an election of about $4,000 per. It's possible that the article could pass here today and then not pass on the ballot, which would put us back at square one, too. Option 3 would be to borrow within the levy limit, meaning we are not raising taxes to cover the cost of the debt payments. Taxes would not increase, however, it will take away from existing services. Again, a 10-year bond would be about $164,000 per year, and a 20-year bond would be about $95,000 per year. Because of the COVID pandemic, we're experiencing decreases to our local revenue streams, which is having a negative impact to our budget projections for this year and next.
Dan, sorry, I need you to wrap it up.
Sure. Option 4 is to use free cash, which would basically take away our capital planning money for this year and any reserves we have for any emergencies that come up. Thank you.
This article requires a 2/3 majority to pass. Are there questions or comments on the article? Please, if you have a question or comment, raise your voter card and approach a microphone. Will the first person at the center microphone approach? Hold up your card, please. Oh, okay.
Emily Teller, Texas Road. So I'm confused as to the 3 options that Dan gave. Will we be increasing taxes so it has to go on the ballot?
Dan, can I get you to answer that? Here's your extra time.
So if Article 5 is approved, sorry, I got crushed down a little bit, is approved, no, it does not need to go on the ballot. Using CPA funds doesn't require a ballot vote. If this fails, and then we consider Motion 4 under Article 6 as a debt exclusion, yes, that would need a ballot.
I have the person on the microphone to my left. Please tell us your name and where you live.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Bunyan. I live at 3 Woods Pond Drive. I'm a Westford resident. I'm also the athletic director here at Westford Academy. I would like to thank everyone for coming out today, and I appreciate all the committee members voting in support of this project. Something I just wanted to emphasize that Tom Mahana mentioned is that this facility will include a family bathroom that will be open 24/7 to the community. So not only for athletic events, but the facilities will be open to the public at all times. So I just wanted to make sure that was clarified, and I appreciate your support for this article. Thank you.
At the center microphone.
Hi, my name is Kendall Donovan. I'm a junior here at Westford Academy. Being a student athlete at WA, there are many things to be proud of. However, the lack of real bathrooms is something that has always been an issue. Simply, it is embarrassing when athletes or coaches from other teams at WA need to use a porta potty, as opposed to potentially using a real bathroom if we had them. When we travel to other schools, there are always nice facilities for the use, and I would hope that Westford would want to be a part of the same caliber. And we are definitely not at that right now. Please consider voting to approve this necessary request. Thank you for your time.
And again at the center microphone.
Hi, my name is Sophia Estevez. I'm currently a senior here, and I'm also a 2-sport varsity athlete. And I'm here to talk about creating the new facility here at Trustees Field. And one of the most prominent issues right now is the lack of real bathrooms. And you might think, oh, the porta potties are fine, but they're really not. The creation of these new bathrooms would create would allow the people of Westford to use adequate bathrooms that can be properly maintained, which the porta potties can't guarantee. This facility would be to everyone's advantage, not just athletes or students of Westford Academy. It would be to the advantage of our parents who come to watch the games, of people who walk the track during school hours or during the weekends. And this should be passed because we shouldn't allow something so small as no bathrooms or no proper bathrooms to let this beautiful place that many people of Westford use to be closed down. Thanks.
At the microphone in the rear, please.
Michelle Long, 59 West Street. I wanted to make sure, I am in support of the idea of the amenity buildings. I just want to make sure that it includes handicap bathrooms. I've been at the track for decades over various events, athletic and not, but it's very difficult to get a parent who's stuck in one of those potty toilets out. So I just want to make sure the design actually covers handicap accessible bathroom, parents who are in walkers or have canes or in wheelchairs when they come to events to watch their grandchildren. Thank you.
Tom Mahana, Chair of the Permanent Building Committee, will answer that question.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Yes, the entire facility is fully handicap accessible. Not only will there be handicap accessible bathrooms in each of the men and the women, but the family restroom will also be fully compliant with ADA.
The microphone to my right.
Yes, good morning. Yes, Chauncey Chua, Green Needles Road. I just have a question here. If you could refresh my memory as to the urgency of having this amenities building funded. And also, if there is some formal urgency to this, could I understand what the documentation is that caused the urgency?
Tom, can you speak to the regulatory requirements?
Sure, thank you, Madam Moderator. The facility is required by plumbing code. The bathrooms in the high school do not put us in compliance because the bathrooms have to be within a certain distance of the stadium itself. So we can't use the bathrooms, take credit for the bathrooms that exist in the high school. As far as the urgency, it's been, as I mentioned earlier, it's been 7 years since we did this. When we did the bleachers and made this kind of an improvement to this entire complex, you're required to comply with the code at the time. Our building commissioner at the time and our current building commissioner have been very cooperative with us, understanding that the expense, attributed to this building, allowed us to, give us some time to do it. So we're required by code to build this facility. So, I mean, as far as the urgency, it's already been 7 years. So I think we are trying to get this done as soon as we can. And we have a project that's been designed, it's been supported, and we have bidders on hand that are ready to start construction.
And Mark,
Did that answer that?
Mark Kost from Finance Committee.
Used to be Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen and Chairman of the Capital Planning Committee. And just one point for the urgency. I've chaired the Capital Planning Committee for the 11 years in which it's been in existence. And for those who've been watching, every year we have over $50 million worth of capital projects that need to get required. We have pushed this off as a Capital Planning Committee as long as possible to make sure that other infrastructure requirements in town have been able to be completed. We've now come to the time where it does not appear as if this can be pushed off anymore. It has always been desired that it be funded through the CPA funds if they were available. And so as long as they're available, this is the proper way to move forward, and the Capital Planning Committee fully supports it.
And my apologies, Mark. He's on the Board of Selectmen, was on the Finance Committee for many years, and the chair of the Capital Planning Committee. At the center microphone, please.
Megan Eckroth, Timberley Lane.
I just wanted to say I am in support of passing this article, and I'm also in support of using the CPA funds as recommended by our committees. I wanted to point out, as a community member and a parent of children who are not yet Westford Academy students, that over the years there have been many times that I have been at this field and used these facilities. Twice now for town meeting, several graduation ceremonies, youth sports, walking on the track. And so I just wanted to remind everybody that it's easy to think of this as being a high school sports amenities building, and that's simply not the case. We are all sitting here today. So I'd just like to point out that I think this is a benefit to our entire community, not just to Westford Academy Sports. That's certainly important, but there's a broader use and value to this. Thank you.
And the microphone to my right.
Good morning, Bob Carter, 8 Nutting Road. When this article came up at the last town meeting, Ellen Hardy spoke at length about the Community Preservation Act is not the way to fund this building. I haven't seen anything in the last 6 months or so to change my opinion on that. Could we hear from the town leadership as to why Ellen's concerns were not addressed? How come this didn't come back financed another way? I'm disappointed to see it once again under Community Preservation Act funding. Thank you.
The recommendations of the town boards are in the book. Does anybody want to provide any further explanation?
So this is an allowable use. I think I spoke to it earlier that not only allowable, but it was an intentional use. One of the concerns that I know was raised in June was that the law has changed since we passed it in 2001. So as we see with our own bylaws and state regulations, laws do change over time. Actually, the Community Preservation Law, Chapter 44B, has been amended 11 times over the past 20 years. And some of those clarifications had to do with recreational projects, but there are also clarifications that allowed changes to what qualified under historic preservation. For example, documents and artifacts, a project that we funded here in Westford, as well as allowing communities to appropriate CPA funds to affordable housing trust funds, as we've also done here in Westford.
Marilyn, center microphone.
Marilyn Frank, 6 Chamberlain Road. I happen to be on the CPC committee for the last 20 years since its inception. I'm its vice chair. I was also part of the initiative to help pass that within Westford. I wasn't going to address the question that the gentleman just mentioned, but I would say that it has always been within our capability to support all of the 4 areas, including recreation. And while there are many of us who may have had the feelings and the impetus to hold on to passing this in Westford because of open space, because of East Boston camps, it was never the intention for many of us to limit it. But I wanted to come to the mic to talk as a citizen of Westford. I mean, there are probably 18,000 people who could be here today, and we have 200. So that I live here in Westford for the last 51 years, and the taxes that we pay, this is the correct way that we should be paying for CPC. As it turns out, a few years ago, we had taxes for teachers' salaries, of which I was very happy to pay, but those taxes are with you forever. Just this past year, everybody got a stormwater management bill, and everyone paid taxes for the first time on that. You are already paying taxes with your CPA. It is a viable use. It is meant to be spent in ways to enrich the town, to fix the town. Certainly to take it from capital would mean that we'd be taking something else away. We have the money to do this. It will not deny us to do other things with open space. Even if we never had the match, we will bring in a minimum of $2 million every single year, much more than that probably, just on the taxes that we have for CPA. This is the right way to go. If we were to bring it to a debt exclusion and had to wait, we would lose the bid that's currently in place. You'll pay more for it. This is the time now. Thank you very much.
Andrea Perrine-Sweet, Chair of the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you. I just want to go back to the question that Mr. Carter posed about why the town boards are considering this again. I would like the community in this town meeting to know that the select board looked at all 4 options when we were determining our position on this article. And it is the view and the unanimous view of the select board that this is the way and this is the best way to fund this project. As other speakers have stated, and I will not repeat, our funds, our community preservation funds are eligible to be used for this. We have paid these taxes already. This is the way to go. To use capital would prevent us from spending capital on other services. To use a debt exclusion means we need to go through both another special election, we need to delay the project, we may lose the bids, and taking all of these into consideration, it was the select board's unanimous vote that this was the best way to fund this project. And we also want to be clear that, you know, the Community Preservation Act allowed for funding for 4 different areas, and we believe that each of these areas deserves funding, and each of these areas deserves our support. So for all of those reasons, we are supporting unanimously funding the amenities project through CPC funds. Thank you.
At the microphone to my right.
Kathy Mokler, 8 Indigo Lane. I've been a resident of Westford for 28 years and had multiple kids that have come through the school system, all athletes. But I wanted to stress the fact that I've spent a lot of time at this field. And on the weekends when you're here, this field kind of runs all day long with youth sports and a variety of other events. This is not something that simply benefits Westford Academy. Youth soccer, youth lacrosse, youth football, all weekend long they're here, and they hold games as well. So it not only affects other people in town, but also other towns that are coming here to have their kids play sports here. And I think Westford really should have a better facility to represent the town of Westford, because it's not just a high school facility.
And at the center microphone.
Ellen Hardy, 39 Main Street. And as I did at the June annual town meeting, I speak in opposition to this, not to the building. You'll have an opportunity to fund that under Article 6. I continue to oppose funding it from community preservation funds. Ingrid is absolutely correct, as is Andrea. We do have the right to spend our CP money on this. But like Ingrid, I was at the town meeting that adopted the CPA 3% tax. And at that time, we were told that the parameters were for open space, recreation fields, housing, and historical preservation. It has changed. There have been 11 amendments. But when I voted on it, that's what I perceive CPA to be for, and I still perceive it for that. I do not see it for a building that has bathrooms in it here or anywhere else in the town of Westford. And I would just like to note that I was reading a case study. It was called the Massachusetts CPA, a case study by Matthew Zieber. And he addresses this very issue that comes before every town meeting in Massachusetts that has adopted CPA. He writes, the absence of rigorous state oversight makes the CPA very attractive to cities and towns. The absence of such oversight, however, has led to broader uses of CPA funds than the law's drafters likely intended, primarily in the area of recreation. An October 2008 decision by the Mass Supreme Judicial Court struck down the use of CPA for funds to create new recreational resources such as ball fields, lights, and playgrounds, except in the case of land newly acquired with CPA funds. So I'm old school, but that's what I want the CPA money to be voted for. So I will vote no on Article 5, and under Article 6, this town meeting can decide whether to fund the building the way we fund other capital expenditures, which is with a loan and, if needed, a debt exclusion. And Madam Moderator, I have one question I'd like to ask for a voter who's not able to be here today. And she asked, isn't this the same motion that was defeated at the annual town meeting? And how can they bring it back again if town meeting said no in June? So I'd like to have that answered for her. Thank you.
So I think that's a question for town council. John Giorgio, town council.
Madam Moderator, through you to the previous speaker, there is no limit on the number of times that town meeting can consider an article, even if it's identical to the one that did not pass in June. The only exception to that rule is zoning articles that are unfavorably acted upon cannot be brought back in the same form for a period of 2 years absent a planning board recommendation. That's the only limitation on the ability of town meeting to change its mind.
Thank you. I've always wanted to be addressed through the previous speaker. Hari Vesta, Chair of the Finance Committee. He is actually the Chair of the Finance Committee. And then I'm going to take one more person at each microphone, and I think we'll take the vote.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Hari. We discussed at length about the Westford Academy bathrooms and the CPC funds. There was no question within the Finance Committee deliberations that we need this project. And also, it was not just for Westford Academy, it's for general Westford community. Everybody can use any time. And we also challenged that whether it is a permissible use of CPC funds. And the committee, CPC committee came and said it is a valid use. So given all the other funding options we considered, this seems to be the best fit, especially the given time when we are living. If funds within your pocket is better spent than any other one. So Finance Committee unanimously voted to support building this project using CPC funds.
Thank you. And at the microphone to my right.
Denali Delmar, 8 Dunstable Road. Move the question.
We have a motion to move the question. Is there a second? Okay. That's not a debatable motion. If we move the question, we'll be taking the vote immediately after we vote to move the question. So if you vote yes, we'll be voting immediately thereafter on this motion we've been discussing. If you vote no, then we will continue the discussion until we end it. So all in favor of moving the question, please raise your orange voter cards. Put them down, please. All opposed? The motion to move the question passes. So now we'll go to the vote on the question we've been discussing, which is to the motion to move the question passes by 2/3. Now we'll move to the motion to appropriate $1,344,152,000 from community preservation funds for construction of the Westford Academy amenities building. This is a 2/3 vote. If I'm unable to calculate a 2/3, then we'll have a count. If you vote yes, you'll be voting in favor of this motion. If you vote no, we will not fund the amenities building from community preservation funds. All in favor of the motion, please raise your voter cards. Put them down, please. All opposed? It may be my inexperience, but I think we need to have a count. Sorry. Can I call the tellers forward for a count, please? All right, let's try that again. All in favor of the motion, please raise your voter cards and please keep them up. This is great exercise. Just keep your hands up, please. It's a test. Okay. All right. Put your hands down, please. All opposed, please raise your hands. Raise your cards with your hands. Keep your hands up, please. All right, you can put your hands down. Thank you. While the tellers are counting, we'll move on to Article 6. Under Article 6, which is on page 5 of your motions booklet, we have 4 motions. We'll begin with the first motion at the top of the page. I have a motion that the town appropriate from free cash the sum of $345,000 and from water enterprise retained earnings the sum of $897,000 to provide for certain capital requests. Is there a second to that motion? This motion only requires a majority vote. I'm going to run through the items in the motion. And again, if anybody has a hold, please raise your card and say hold as loudly as you can. We'll put that aside while we vote on the motions, on the parts of the motion that have no hold. So starting at the top, from technology, $38,000 for network upgrades. Public buildings, is that for technology or for public buildings? Okay. We have a hold on public buildings. $90,000 for the school administration office feasibility study. From public buildings, $14,000 for replacement of the Nabnasset Fire Station HVAC system. From public buildings, $140,000 for additional funding for the construction of the center fire station antenna. From animal control, $33,000 for vehicle replacement. From wastewater management, $30,000 for design of the Westford Academy wastewater treatment plant tank rehabilitation. And from the water enterprise retained earnings, $40,000 for SCADA system improvements. $60,000 for dump truck with plow. $57,000 for utility truck with plow. $740,000 for replacement of the filter media in the Nutting Road water treatment plant. Okay, so we'll go forward with the vote for those items that do not have a hold on them. No, there's no questions or discussion on those. We've already asked that. So all in favor of the articles that do not, the parts of the motion that do not have a hold, please raise your orange cards. Put them down, please. All opposed? The motion, that aspect of the motion passes unanimously. Can the person who had the hold on the public buildings, $90,000 for the school administration office feasibility study approach the microphone? Is that you in the center?
No.
No? Oh, Dennis, got it.
Dennis Galvin, 90 Concord Road, member of the Finance Committee. If you'll note on your notes below this, it says that the Finance Committee, just want to point it out, Finance Committee opposed this. And the background behind this was as a result of interactions with the school as well as the Board of Selectmen and discussions over the current state of the finances for this town. There is a significant amount of concern about future revenue given the COVID situation. For example, state revenues now are down about $6 billion. So there's a lot of uncertainty. And as a result of that uncertainty, the Finance Committee in discussion came to the conclusion that it would be important for us at this point to try to hold on to as much free cash as we can. So we are looking at this. There's already been a partial study of the school administrative office feasibility, and we think at this particular point in time that, at least I believe, and I think the members do, that it would be well to hang on to this money at least for a year or so till we see how the revenue picture clears up, and that's it.
Thank you, Dennis. Andrea Perrines-Sweet, Chair of the Select Board.
Thank you. Initially, the Select Board supported this appropriation. However, at our last meeting, we voted to reconsider, and we have changed our vote. And in our reconsideration, we are not supporting the expenditure of $90,000 for feasibility study for the school administration building at this time. And I do want to make that clear that it's at this time. And the reasons that we have made this change are slightly different from the Finance Committee, but Currently, there are funds appropriated for several feasibility studies for this body may remember that 3 years ago we appropriated $100,000 for a recreational feasibility study. Those funds have not yet been expended. We also have 51 Main Street, which while is not on the warrant for this town meeting, we have sent that back to the Permanent Town Building Committee for further study in light of COVID and in light of the design of the building for COVID and what, if any, changes need to be made to that building. So, and there are funds that are still appropriated for the design of that building that have not been expended. In addition, this body is going to be considering 63 Main Street later on in this meeting. We also have library construction that's out there in the future. So at this time, the Select Board feels that there is a lot going on right now. There's a lot going on in the town center in terms of how we want it to look, how we want to plan for it, what we want to do. And for that reason, the Select Board feels that it is appropriate to pause right now, to take a breath, to look at all of these funds that have either out there, have been appropriated or may be appropriated, to look at our town center and then to see where we're going with all of that, and to then at that point, and most likely at our annual 2021 town meeting, bring this back up to determine how we're going to be going forward. So for all of those reasons, this is the Select Board's recommendation that we not fund this at this time and that we take a pause and that we look at all of the amenities, all of the needs of the town going forward before we make any further decisions. So thank you.
Hari Vesta, Chair of the Finance Committee.
Hello, everybody. This is a classic case of all the boards in Westford are unison and thinking the same thing. In addition to Dennis and Andrea, for us, it is not an immediate need. It is a need, definitely, but it is not an immediate need. And during the times when we are facing hanging on to free cash has a higher level of priority than studying this particular item. So Finance Committee revoted this morning and we unanimously not approve this $90,000 expense. Thank you.
I'm going to take the question at the center microphone, please.
Yeah, my question is related to the wastewater management. I put the hold on that.
Oh, okay. Can you step back until we finish this one? Thank you. Are there any questions about, okay, the school finance, school administration feasibility study?
Erica Cole, 4 Francis Hill Road. I noticed the $90,000 and the allusion by Mr. Galvin earlier that there has already been some feasibility study done. And I'm just wondering what, I mean, if it's coming out to over $100,000, that seems like more than we've spent previously on feasibility studies. What have we already received in terms of feasibility study, and what do we hope to accomplish with the $90,000? Thank you.
Tom Mahana, maybe, from the, is Tom here? Oh, Ingrid.
So now I'm the finance director of the schools, Ingrid Nilsson. The feasibility study that was done previously was an initial location study done by town staff and the Permanent Town Building Committee, and didn't, I believe, expend any funds.
Do you have a question at the right for this, please?
Paul Fassbender, 14 Texas Road. I really want to applaud the board's fiscal conservatism in this time as things are up in the air. As it turns out, October, among other things, is when the COLAs for Social Security are announced and so forth. This year, the COLA came in at 1.3%, which is down from 1.6% in the past. So in addition to the other stresses that are going on, people on Social Security and fixed incomes really have a problem meeting even the normal property tax rate. So anything we can save from capital spending in other areas is really appreciated.
Mark Kost from the Board of Selectmen in the Capital Planning Committee.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I do want to make clear that the Capital Planning Committee fully supports and understands the need for a study for the school administration building, and that change does need to happen. The reason that we've recommended 6-3 to not recommend it at this point is really is so that we don't encumber $90,000 before we have a plan for all of the town facilities, including 63 Main that Andrea referenced before. So again, there is no question that schools need a new administration building in the very near future. It's just at this time, just to encumber 90,000 prior to us having a well-vetted plan didn't seem to make sense.
And at the microphone to my left.
Oak Hill Road.
Can you move closer to the mic?
Sure. Arnold Price, 19 Oak Hill Road. I think we've heard from all the boards that they're not in support of this, so I'd like to move the question.
Is there a second? All in favor of terminating discussion and taking a vote on this article, please raise your cards in the air. Put them down, please. All opposed? Motion to move the question passes. So we're now voting on whether or not to allocate from free cash $90,000 for the school administration office feasibility study. All in favor, please raise your cards in the air. This is a majority vote. All opposed? The motion fails. Moving on to additional funding for the construction of the center fire station antenna. The person who has the hold on that, please approach the microphone.
Dennis Galvin, 90 Concord Road. Again, this particular issue is related to the previous one. There's a concern about the availability of free cash given the revenue situation caused by COVID. In conversation with the chairman of the Permanent Building Committee, Tom Mahana, we learned from our conversation that this particular antenna is tied to the construction of the new municipal building. As it currently sits right now, the antenna does not impact, at least we were told that this did not impact current fire department operations. This would have to have moved forward if, in fact, the municipal building was going to move forward. But the town managers informed us that the town municipal building is on delay. So at this particular point, there is no imminent reason to move forward with the expenditure of these funds. So we think it is wise to put this money back into free cash.
Any other comments or questions on this? If not, I'll call for the vote. Oh, Tom Mahana.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Tom Mahana, Chair of the Permanent Town Building Committee. Mr. Galvin is correct. The antenna is connected to the existing station. The station is planned to be demolished when and if we do construct the new center building. The fire station will have to be demolished. So it's not a question of if we're ever going to do it. Even if the center building does not move forward, that the center fire station does have to get demolished. So we've already we have bids in hand. We bid the project earlier this fall. The bidders are willing to hold their price till after town meeting. Hopefully this is an additional appropriation to what was appropriated last fall. So it was our hope to be able to move forward with this project with the bids in hand. Thank you.
To the left.
Heather Fitzpatrick, Shannon Circle. I'm also a member of FinCom and the Capital Committee. One of the things we looked at originally with the original appropriation was how the tower would look behind the new 51 Main Street building. And I think since we're pulling that off, reevaluating it, we really don't know what that building might look like and how it might disguise or camouflage the new tower. So my vote was to hold back for that reason as well.
The microphone in the back.
Good morning, Alan Moyer, 69 Forest Road. I'm a little confused and I'd just like some clarification. We've had two speakers, one of whom claimed that we didn't have to do this. There was no antenna work necessary at this time. Tom McKenna just got up and said that if we move forward with the demolition of the building, I got the impression that we would have to do the antenna work. Could someone please clarify whether between now and next town meeting, these funds are going to be necessary? Thank you.
Tom Mahana.
Yes, the existing antenna is attached to the fire station, so that has to be removed. Number one, in order for us to be able to demolish the fire station, and if we ever do move forward with a project at 51 Main. The reason why we're here today is because the original estimate that was done a year ago, which was before the project was ever designed. The estimate was we appropriated $260,000 for the project. So since over the last year, the project's been designed. We've received input from public safety. We've made some modifications to the original design intent. We've gone through planning board. We've got all of our local approvals to move forward with the project. And then when the bids came in, they came in over budget. So the reason why we're here today is because of the increase in costs since last year. And obviously, nobody could have predicted COVID during this time. Thank you.
I think, Tom, specifically the question was, do we need to have this between now and the next town meeting?
Well, I guess the direct answer is no. There is no funding in place currently to demolish the fire station. So, but, that building has now sat vacant for going on 2 years. The longer that building sits, the higher the risk. It is, it is planned to be demolished. We don't have funding in place right now, but it will have to come down at some point. This is the first step to do it. So even if we don't demolish the fire station for another 5 more years, we still have to do the antenna. So if we wait, the project will most likely cost more money if we come back and do it later.
To my left.
Diane Wood, 122 Depot. My original question was going to be why FinCom, did vote this down. However, I would expect the logic that was just explained regarding the feasibility study and being conservative and everything our select chair described, and COVID, I would think that all of that logic would apply to voting this down at this point.
Mark Cost.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So it's a little bit different than the discussion that we just had. And the reason is irrespective of when that center fire station comes down, that antenna needs to be moved. As Tom said, whether it's 5 years or not. This, to the Capital Planning Committee, is about cost escalation. So the longer we wait to move this antenna, the more it's going to cost at that point. So if we wait 5 years to move the antenna, the current cost or incremental cost of $114,000 that's being requested here is going to be more. So we know this needs to be moved. Previous town meetings had already approved the initial funding prior to the cost escalation. So the Capital Planning Committee fully supports the need to do this and appropriate the funds now.
And at the center microphone, then I think we'll call for the vote.
Kelly Ross, 7 Carriageway. Through you, Madam Moderator, I'd like to ask if any of our public safety officials could weigh in on this, let us know what they think of the urgency and importance, and what their recommendation on this might be. Thank you.
Do we have someone from public safety? Chief Tom McEnany or Chief Targ? Oh. Joe Targ, Fire Chief.
Currently, everything's functioning fine with what's there. The problem is, number one would be the cost increase in 5 years. and the deterioration of the building. We've shut off utilities to the building, the heat. Structurally, it's sound, but if you wait 5 years, our concern would be if there's any kind of collapse on the tower or the wood starts to rot, you get a windstorm, it could come down. That tower's not made to be self-supporting. It needs to be guided or held in place by that tower, the hose tower, the wood part of the building.
All right, thank you. I'm going to call for the vote. A yes vote will allow for the allocation of $140,000 from free cash for additional funding for the construction of the center fire station antenna, and a no vote would be against that. All in favor, please hold up your orange cards. All opposed? Yikes. The motion passes with a majority. Will the person who had, before we do that, Article 5 passes with a 2/3 majority. The vote was 155 in favor and 46 against. Will the person who had the hold on the 155?
No. The orange cards.
Yes?
That we just voted on for the $140,000.
Are you asking for a count?
Yes, please.
Okay, if 7 voters stand up and request a count, we'll do that. Is there anyone else who wants a count for that vote? Please hold your cards up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. I'll call the tellers forward. No, 20 is. Sorry, John would have corrected me if it was wrong. It's wrong.
Oh, that's right.
Patty was just checking me up here, but I was right. All right, all in favor of the $140,000 allocation from free cash for construction of the center fire station antenna? Please raise your cards in the air and keep them up. While we're waiting for the count, I've been studying town meeting time really hard, which is what governs town meeting, so I know what I'm doing. And I was looking for the definition of moderator, and they have this really good definition, which is, in nuclear physics, the term moderator is used to describe the substance which is mixed with uranium in a reactor to slow down the high-speed particles to the point where they can do some useful work. That's me. You're the particles. All right, hands down, please. All those against, please raise your hands and your cards in your hands. Okay, put your hands down, please. I know. I hate dead time. There we go. The motion passes 106 to 101. Okay. All right. That's what, oh yeah. Will the person who had the hold on the design of the Westford Academy wastewater treatment plant please approach the microphone?
Bob Carter, 8 Nutting Road. I withdraw my hold.
All right. We'll take that vote then. All in favor of $30,000 for the design of the wastewater academy, of the Westford Academy wastewater treatment plant rehabilitation, please raise your cards in the air. Put them down, please. All opposed? The motion passes. It's not unanimous. We're now on the second motion under Article 6. This requires a 2/3 vote. We have a motion that the town appropriate $440,000 for the purpose of constructing a sidewalk on Carlisle Road and borrow said amount by bonding. Is there a second? Paul Starrett. Oh, there he is. Town engineer. Oh. Okay. Do you want to just? Sure. Yeah.
Hi, good morning. My name's Chris Barrett, 13 Vos Hill Road. I'm the current chair of the Pedestrian Safety Committee. This article here is for the construction funding of a sidewalk on Carlisle Road. Carlisle Road has been on the Pedestrian Safety Committee's prioritization list for several years now. The reason why we have it on the prioritization list is because of the presence of several neighborhoods in that area, several large businesses, all of which contribute a large amount of foot traffic from those locations to the commercial district along 110. The reason why we're bringing it forward now is that there is a 55 and over development that is under construction currently. As part of that development, the developer will be building a sidewalk from approximately 20 Carlisle Road up to Liberty Way. And there's currently no sidewalk from Liberty Way upwards to 110. So this sidewalk would join to that sidewalk. And as the part of having numerous public meetings with residents in that area, there was so much support for the sidewalk from residents, they wanted to see the sidewalk continue further south down Carlisle Road. And so we've now changed the scope of the plan to try and push the sidewalk down to Applewood Drive. If with this sidewalk was constructed, it would allow for the residents of several neighborhoods, plus members of the businesses in that area to safely walk up to the restaurants and shops along 110. It would also allow for us to open up access to the Audubon land that's behind Mac Technologies. So those residents could walk down to that path and get into the Audubon land back there. And lastly, there is a plan to try to connect Applewood with Misty Lane, and it would allow residents from areas along Old Lowell to come through that pathway, come up along Applewood Drive, hook onto the sidewalk, and walk up into the commercial district. So it would really increase the connectivity for a number of different residents that are in those areas. And I understand that, we've heard a lot about funding's tight, but because we have this project already in play with the developer, I would urge town meeting voters to support this so we can get this necessary piece of pedestrian infrastructure in place. Thank you.
Questions? Center Mike?
Vicky Geary, 51 Carlisle Road. It's a little echoey. So my question is, it's going all the way to Applewood, correct? And is it on both sides of the street or just one side?
Currently, it's just at one side of the street.
Okay. And there is a section of sidewalk where the Dollar Tree is. Are you replacing that section? Because you just mentioned that it was going, you're constructing from Liberty Way to all the way to the Four Corners. So I'm not understanding why you have to replace that.
Currently, that section of sidewalk is not compliant with ADA regulations, so we would be increasing the width of that sidewalk at that point.
And are there any future plans to extend this beyond Apple down to where I live? No.
That's a great question. As I mentioned earlier, this road has been on the prioritization list for several years, and it is the entirety of the road. We are just currently limited by budget, obviously, to not be able to tackle the entirety of the road at this point. Our original plan was, again, to hook into that sidewalk that was being developed by that developer, and it was just because of the nature that we were able to reduce the sidewalk count from 2 sides of the road to 1 because the resident abutter did not want to provide permission for us to put the sidewalk on their property. We then said, okay, well, since we had so many residents who wanted to see it go further south, we're going to push it as far south as we can given the original allocated budget. In the future, we'd like to, of course, see it go as far down as possible.
And I think just for a frame of reference, because I think I heard originally that the sidewalk was not going to go that far. And I looked at the $440,000. I went, holy, that's a lot of money. So on an average basis, I think just as an educational piece, what does it cost per 1/10 of a mile to build a sidewalk?
I'm going to ask our town engineer to answer that question. Paul?
Sure. Thank you, Paul Sterrett, town engineer. So we use a $200 per foot for sidewalks because which is almost the same as a road, but it's a lot of handwork and it's a lot more complicated. So that's a higher value.
Okay, great. Thank you.
At that same microphone.
Paul Fossbender, Texas Road. I want to ask why we're being asked to fund it in this way. What other funding sources were looked at? I know historically the planning board's been really creative about finding money for sidewalks from developers and businesses. Is there some other way to do this?
Do you want to take that, Chris?
Yes, so the design so far of the project has come from alternative sources. We've used money from what we call the PWA account, which is the Princeton Properties that was built several years ago. And we have actually used money from what we call the sidewalk gift account, which is funds that occur from developments that the planning board has talked with developers and said, hey, in lieu of building a sidewalk on your property, your development, excuse me, we're going to put money into this fund. So we have leveraged other funding sources for the design of this project. There is not enough money in other funds at this point to pay for the entirety of the construction.
So can you tell us about what the whole project costs and what percentage roughly we're paying for?
Sure, I'm going to turn that over to Paul again.
Paul Sterrett, town engineer. We estimate the cost of the project to be $444,000.
Can I have the next?
But that seems to be what you're asking us for. I was asking what percentage of that is being covered from these other funds that we were told about.
The design of the project was funded from the Princeton Properties account, and the construction will come from this capital request.
Ah, okay, thank you.
And at the center microphone again.
Eric Kintner, 14 Village View Road. I just wanted to take a moment to invoke the memory the memory of Gloria Black, who championed sidewalks in Westford more than 25 years ago.
All right, seeing no further questions, we'll take the vote. All those in favor of appropriating $440,000 for the construction of a sidewalk on Carlisle Road, please raise your cards in the air. This vote requires a 2/3 majority. Please put your cards down. Please put your cards down. All opposed? The motion passes with a 2/3 majority. Moving to the third motion under Article 6. I have a motion that the town appropriate $8,160,000 for infrastructure improvements at Oak Hill Road, Plain Road, and Moore Road, and borrow said amount by bonding. Is there a second to that motion? Paul? Did you? Oh, okay.
Steve Cronin, Director of Public Works. So the Department of Public Works is requesting $2.35 million from the Water Enterprise, $2.02 million from the Stormwater Enterprise, and $3.79 million from the General Fund for a total of $8.16 million for the purposes of roadway, water, and drainage improvements along portions of Oak Hill Road, Plain Road, and Moore Road. Total length of roadway improvements are 1.75 miles and will improve roadway safety conditions and pedestrian access. Project will include a new sidewalk to be constructed on the western side of Oak Hill Road to link the existing Plain Road sidewalks and Brookside Road sidewalk to the recently constructed sidewalks along Groton Road and Plain Road. The water system improvements will include the replacement of 7,300 linear feet of undersized and outdated water main with new 12-inch ductile iron water main for the purposes of improving fire protection, water quality, and hydraulic conditions within the water system. Finally, proposed drainage improvements include the installation of 7,800 linear feet of new drainage pipe, 70 catch basins, and 60 manholes to improve the collection, treatment, and conveyance of stormwater runoff. These three roads have been identified as high priority roads for the town as they provide access to regional connector and commuter roadways such as Interstate 495, Route 3, and Route 40. If approved, the department intends to advertise this project for public bidding in December of this year with an anticipated construction start date of April 2021.
Thank you, Steve. Jody Ross, Town Manager.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just wanted to make a little announcement that at the last town meeting, you approved creating a Department of Public Works, and Steve Cronin was promoted into that position from Water Superintendent, so maybe we could give him a round of applause.
Seeing no questions from the floor, we'll call for the vote. This also requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of allocating $8,160,000 for infrastructure improvements at Oak Hill, Plain, and Moore Roads, please raise your cards in the air. Put them down. All opposed? The motion passes by 2/3. It is not unanimous. On the fourth motion under Article 6, Jody Ross, Town Manager.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. As this project was approved under Article 5, I make a motion to dismiss this article.
Is there a second? Thank you. One moment. right, all in favor of dismissing this article, please raise your cards in the air. Put them down, please. All opposed? Oh. The motion to dismiss passes. One moment. The fourth motion is dismissed. We're now at Article 7. Under Article 7, I have a motion to transfer $352,711.81 from available funds to reduce the net amount to be raised by taxes for fiscal 2021. Is there a second? Any questions? All in favor of transferring the funds, please raise your orange cards in the air. Put them down, please. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We're now at Article 8. The next two motions have to do with easements needed to proceed with the improvements that you authorized funding for in the second and third motions of Article 6. So the first is that the town authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire certain permanent and/or temporary easements on Plain Road, Oak Hill Road, and Moore Road for the construction, alteration, maintenance, improvement, and repair of sidewalks, drainage, utility, and slope work. Is there a second? This vote requires a simple majority. Are there any questions? If not, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, please raise your orange cards in the air. Put your cards down. All opposed? The motion passes. It's not unanimous. Town Council has corrected me, and there's also a correction in your book, that requirement, these two articles must, there's some question as to whether they need to pass by majority or two-thirds. However, it was definitely by two-thirds. It passed by two-thirds. Article 9, similarly, that the town authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire certain permanent and temporary easements along Carlisle Road for the construction, alteration, maintenance, and improvement of sidewalks, drainage, utility, and slope work. Is there a second? All in favor, please hold your cards in the air. Down, please. All opposed? That passes unanimously. Please don't enter or leave the field while the votes are being taken. I'm sorry I didn't say that before, but while we're taking votes, everybody please remain on the field or off the field. Okay. We're at Article 10. I have a motion under Article 10 to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire easements along Beaverbrook Road and Weber Road for bridge construction and relocation, to appropriate $75,000 from free cash to fund the cost of easement acquisitions, to transfer care, custody, and control of portions of certain land along Beaverbrook Road from the Conservation Commission to the Board of Selectmen, and to obtain an easement from the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife for driveway reconstruction and erosion control. Is there a second? Paul Starrett.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Paul Starrett, Town Engineer. So this will allow us to acquire the property rights that we need in working with abutters. In this case, 2 of the 4 are government agencies. I'm also happy to report that we're not asking for construction funding. We were successful in negotiating with Mass DOT to pay the $2 million in construction funding for the bridge, but the town does need to pay for the property rights, and that's what you have before you.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none. All in favor, please raise your orange cards in the air. This requires a 2/3 vote. Put your cards down. All opposed? The article passes unanimously. Okay, we're now at Article 11. Article 11 is a citizen's petition, and the lead petitioner, Dr. Chaitanya Hiramath, will make the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chaitanya Hiramath. I'm a resident of Patton Road, and I have a citizen's petition asking that Indigenous Peoples Day be observed by Westford residents. Did you know that Merrimack, Nashoba, Tadmuck, all names familiar in Westford, are just a few names in the area that have been taken from Native American culture? Today, I would like to briefly present answers to 3 questions. First, what is Indigenous Peoples Day? Native American history is American history. Indigenous Peoples Day is a holiday that celebrates and honors Native American peoples and commemorates their histories and cultures. Christopher Columbus did not discover America. Today, let's remember and celebrate the peoples who are here first. Christopher Columbus started his journey to find India in 1492, but he ended up in the Caribbean shores, meeting what he presumed to be Indians, but were in fact Taino, indigenous people of the Caribbean. He used their kindness against them, made many of them slaves, and destroyed native cultures and native artifacts. But yet we celebrate him. A lot of people have been taught an inaccurate history of Christopher Columbus, his journey to the Americas, one that erases the violence of his actions and attitudes. With all due respect, there's an ugly truth that has been overlooked for way too long. But remaining neutral and pretending like it never happened, or it happened a while ago, or it does not impact us today, it's wrong. It's important to learn the whole story. The violence of Columbus and colonization should not be romanticized in history or honored with a holiday. Today is an opportunity for us to acknowledge the reality of our nation's history, honor the long-standing contributions and identities of Indigenous peoples, and fight for Indigenous representation, equality, and justice. Second, who is celebrating it? The holiday was first proposed by Indigenous peoples during 1977 United Nations Conference, quote, to observe October 12th, the day of the so-called discovery of America, as the International Day of Solidarity with the Indigenous peoples of the Americas. After 30 years, in 2007, United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples was adopted by the General Assembly. Right now, 10 US states and 121 cities officially recognize Indigenous Peoples Day, and many other places are joining the movement to honor the holiday. Third, why is this holiday important? I'm an Asian Indian American. Less than 1% of the US population is Indian Americans. Thankfully, this demographic is doing extremely well in America. On the other hand, currently there are over 600 native nations in the US and make up about 2% of the country's total population. Yet, representation of native peoples is seriously lagging, and Native communities still experience discrimination. There are currently 175 indigenous languages spoken today in the United States, and the number of these speakers continues to decline. The Native American population has high incidence of COVID and other diseases. Reservations are being used as dumping grounds for toxic and nuclear waste. Native Americans have the lowest high school and university graduation rates in the US. Although the official policy of the United States is now to encourage Native American self-determination, in reality, the power of Native communities is severely limited. Indigenous Peoples Day pushes back on this invisibility. It allows Native people and their perspectives to be centered and celebrated. The holiday also gives non-Native people the chance to gain a better understanding of the Native communities. Namely, they are still here, they are relevant today, and their identities are valid. Personally, I want Native American community also to thrive. I have deep respect and appreciation for the resilience, diversity, and strength of the indigenous peoples, and their way of life living in harmony and balance with the physical world. To conclude, in 2016, in Massachusetts, the Cambridge City Council was the first city that voted unanimously to recognize the holiday. They were followed by cities of Amherst, Northampton, Pittsfield, and Somerville. If successful, Westford will be the 6th town. Indigenous Peoples Day is about celebrating people whose vibrant and fascinating cultures have been forgotten. I strongly urge the residents of Westford to commemorate the Indigenous Peoples Day. In the words of the first Native American Poet Laureate of US, Joy Harjo, all acts of kindness are lights in the war for justice. She also wrote, "The door to the mind should only open from the heart. An enemy who gets in risks the danger of becoming a friend." Thank you.
We have a motion for the recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day. Is there a second? Question at the microphone on my right.
It's not a question, it's a comment, or commentary, I should say. Kathy Lynch on Rush Road. Christopher Columbus was a brave explorer navigator who completed 4 challenging voyages from the Atlantic Ocean, opening the way for European exploration and colonization of America. While all human beings are imperfect, Columbus is being targeted and demonized while indigenous peoples are being glorified. This is imbalanced and unfair. In Columbia Magazine, Carol Delaney, former professor at Stanford and Brown Universities, explained that Columbus gave strict instructions to the settlers to treat the native people with respect, though some of his men rebelled and disobeyed orders. Robert Royal, author of Columbus and the Crisis of the West, wrote, "Contrary to the view that Columbus is the source of later mistreatment of Native Americans, he tried to get help in restraining that very abuse. At one point, he complained to the Spanish monarchs about the way that Spaniards were exploiting natives for gain and taking indigenous people's concubines. He asked them to send Christian missionaries to Spaniards. Regarding indigenous peoples, let's not overlook some of the horrible practices. Royal described evil practices among native populations. For example, there was human sacrifice in the Caribbean and even cannibalism when Columbus arrived there. When Spaniards reached the mainland, they were horrified at the vast numbers of human beings who had their hearts cut out and their bodies thrown down the steps of the temples of what is today's Mexico City. Sadly, all human beings are imperfect and capable of doing horrible things, and we condemn this. At the same time, both Columbus and Indigenous peoples have been blessed with many worthy attributes and actions. For these, let us continue to recognize Columbus Day and perhaps choose another day during the year to recognize Indigenous peoples. Let's vote down this article that displaces Columbus Day, and if the town so desires, simply craft a new article that adds an additional holiday called Indigenous Peoples Day.
At the center microphone, please.
I'm Bianca Rose at 58 Nutting Road. I'm speaking in opposition of changing Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. First, I want to say that all of the accusations towards Christopher Columbus that are listed in this motion are false. It just took me a few minutes and a little research to figure out that Columbus was a morally sound person. He was a devout Catholic. He had unshakable faith and determination. He was against slavery and harming of the native population. Many entries in his diaries speak to his insistence on treating the natives in a friendly, kind, and respectful manner, and simply trade with them and gain knowledge of the land. Columbus was not perfect, but he was hardly the monstrous person being used to assassinate his holiday. He was a prolific navigator, and he deserves this day to commemorate his extraordinary achievement, which ultimately led to our first chapter of history as the United States of America. I also want to bring awareness to how Columbus Day came to be and what it means to the Italian American community, which is the 5th largest ethnic group in the United States. In 1891, after many years of discrimination and horrible acts against Italian Americans, 11 innocent Sicilians were lynched. This is the largest lynching in all of US history, and it wasn't the first against Italians. After this lynching, President Harrison wanted to ease tensions between the Italian American community and the Italian government. His hope was to bring everyone together as Americans, and so Columbus Day was born. Christopher Columbus was a universally appreciated figure and was widely recognized as the reason why our country exists. I know the discrimination that my father and my grandparents went through. My grandparents never spoke of it. I knew them as people of deep, unwavering faith who gave their family everything. It was my father who educated me in all that they endured, and it was awful. It makes sense why they never taught their children the language of their homeland. They wanted them to fully acclimate and be seen as Americans.
I'm sorry, but I'm going to ask you to get back to the motion that we have before us.
Oh, well, I was just going to say that when Columbus Day was established, Italians saw Christopher Columbus as a symbol that meant they were now accepted members and citizens of our nation. Italian Americans have adopted this holiday as a celebration of their heritage and as confirmation that they are truly woven into the fabric of the United States. Replacing this holiday for another is destructive and culturally insensitive. It's divisive and not keeping with the spirit of an increasingly diverse Westford. So for these reasons, I urge you to vote against this change. Thank you for your time.
And at the rear microphone.
My name's Tom Weaver, Vos Hill Road. I'm voting against this Indigenous People Day. As navigator of the USS Texas, I studied a lot about Columbus because it was kind of interesting that he was a navigator as well. The greatness of him is not that he made mistakes and he was human like all of us. The fact was he conquered his fears and went forward. And he discovered a bunch of islands. The first note in this is that he enslaved the populations of the Caribbean and that he wrote it in his entry. Well, there's a lot of stuff in the Bible that says we do bad things if you just take the bad words out of the Bible. His entry actually said, I'm going to take 8+ people back so that they can learn the language, learn the religion of Catholicism, and then return them to help train. So that was the truth. It had nothing to do with slavery. Now, whether or not he got their permission, I don't know, but it was a noble effort. The second thing that kind of bothers me is that it talks about how even though Columbus and the Spanish and the Italians and the Portuguese and the British came here, they wanted to enslave, kill, murder, and that there is a little bit of flu and disease that killed the Native Americans. Well, as we know now, and as the Pilgrims wrote about and this and that, 90% of the Native population died of disease.
Europeans didn't know they were carrying disease. Unlike now, we know where certain diseases came from, and yet we're going to blame Columbus for something he didn't know about. If indeed we do have Indigenous American Day, yes, they did a lot of good things, but the simple word in describing them at that time was they were savages. Their sole purpose in life was to survive. They weren't environmental friendly. They burned massive amounts of land so that the animals would come out and they could kill them and eat. If they came upon a picnic of another tribe, they didn't ask to share. They killed the tribe. Even Columbus wrote about how nasty they were, island to island. These are the truths. Tobacco, they introduced tobacco to the entire world. In fact, it might be funny if you ever want to look at the history of St. Mary's County, the blowing smoke up some part of a body, that was a Native American cure for when you were constipated. The English actually called it the 5-step solution. That's true. You have to read the notes that came from the House of Burges and went back to talking about the colonies. Native Americans also enslaved. Anybody they didn't kill or rape, they enslaved. They traded them to the various people that came over. Now, fortunately, the people of Maryland and the people of Virginia, when the slaves were traded and when slaves were traded from ships that came over to Jamestown, if you read the diaries and you read the letters that went back, the first thing the Europeans did was transfer those slaves to what's called indentured servant. And if the people learned the language and became Christians after 7 years, they were granted land grants, and they were complete citizens. In fact, Virginia...
Sir, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up, please.
I will wrap it up. In Virginia, the largest landowners were blacks from that trade of slaves that the 1619 Project does. So I advise everybody, do your homework, look up the history. Don't count on what the history is from the 1980s up today. Go and read the original sources. Thank you.
And at the microphone to my left.
Dennis Galvin, 90 Concord Road. Madam Moderator, I am willing to support a resolution or a petition that recognizes the injustices that were done against the indigenous population, Native Americans, in this country and this continent. However, I can't support this one because I object to its spirit and its substance. It is based upon a flawed historical analysis, which is called basically presentism, which is the application of current moral values and attitudes and applying them to ancient times. It is absurd and unjust to judge somebody from an ancient time with today's values. They didn't know, they wouldn't have known what we were even talking about. Now, in Christopher Columbus's time, a person was either a slave or a slave owner in some form. All right, as has been pointed out, the Native Americans here engaged in slavery. For 100 years, under the French assistance, many people from this Commonwealth were transported into slavery into Canada. For years, in the Moorish kingdoms in northern Africa, retained thousands of American sailors as slaves up until 1830. What Columbus should be remembered for is his perseverance in pursuit of science in opposition to great ignorance. And because of his perseverance, we all benefit. All of us here have benefited by his discovery. In addition, a society has been created here that tries to edify liberty, equality, and diversity. Now, this is part of I think it's a little disingenuous to condemn somebody with a legacy like that. This petition is also part of a little bit of a larger iconoclastic spirit against American culture and history. If you pass this particular resolution, it's tantamount to basically making a confession that this nation was rooted and is irredeemably racist, which I think is absolutely not true. This Commonwealth, as an example, takes a backseat to no one in pursuit of racial justice. We were the first to outlaw slavery after the Revolution. Our John Quincy Adams fought for 20 years in the Congress to oppose slave interests. Our Senator Charles Sumner was nearly beaten to death on the floor of the Senate opposing slave interest. And in 1861, Massachusetts men and women were among the first to head south to confront the Confederacy. However, there is somebody in American history that I do believe
Dennis, I'm just going to ask you to stick to the motion.
Okay, there is. So what I would suggest is that this particular motion be defeated, and if so, I will propose a resolution that will identify a particular individual and a particular atrocity that I think should be recorded, and I think that should be the basis of this particular petition, not a full condemnation of the United States people and its culture. Thank you.
And the microphone to my right.
My name is Meredith Kelly. I live on Depot Street. I have a slightly different take, but I am opposed. One thing that I've always loved about Westford is its focus on the community. And one thing that I was a little, I guess, not happy with was there's no mention of any particular people group or person in terms of this day. I think it would be much better if it mentioned a people group that was in this region tied to Westford. I tried to do my own research to find something, and what I was able to locate was the Nipmuc people. And in terms of cross-referencing their history in the region, it is hard to find something. But the one event that I was able to run across was an event in 1676, where there was a battle between colonists and them, and not to focus on the battle itself, but in the aftermath, 7 children were killed. That's half of the total, and 21 were taken captive. And of those 21, 7 died in captivity of starvation. I'm not saying that that applies to all the people groups, but I'm saying there should be a larger study where we look at who was in this region, what's the true history, good and bad. And we look at that, and if we choose to celebrate that, that's great. But something so general that isn't just Westford focused, I'm opposed to. That's it.
At the center microphone.
Chris Sanders, Koala Bear Lane. I'm here to speak in favor of the citizens' petition. As a parent of children in Westford, I recognize that they get the second Monday in October off every year for a holiday that's based in a history that is inarguably white-centric and Eurocentric. It's not to denigrate Christopher Columbus, but I believe one way that we chip away against these biases is to take active measures and lifting up and celebrating the peoples that inhabited and were stewards of this land for centuries before any of my ancestors were here is, I think, one way that we can, it's a symbol of our effort to examine our own history and our own biases and to promote a community that is equitable and celebrates all.
And at the microphone in the back, please.
Yes, Daniela Battezzato, 38 Forest Road. I speak as an Italian immigrant. I've lived in Westford for 18 years with my family. We're all Italians. My children have been in the schools. And I've always found out pride in our heritage. But what I've seen, so many Italians or descendants of Italians have been taught not to speak Italian in their homes. And they were discriminated, treated worse than Black people. And this Columbus Day was instituted also to make them feel part of the American society. I oppose canceling this festivity for all those that went through these difficulties. They deserve something to be proud of. We can always look back in history and what happened and be responsible for something that belonged to things that we will never do it again, and I'm glad they won't. If we want to celebrate Native Americans, let's do it on a different day, but let's keep Columbus Day. Thank you.
At the microphone to my left.
The solution is simple, but let me ask. I think the fundamental reason why we are proposing this is to alleviate the indigenous people's quality of life, okay? So let's find another day. The reason why I'm saying, if we recognize Indigenous People Day on Columbus Day, it actually does opposite to what the gentleman is trying to do. It's not going to elevate indigenous people's lives, but they are going to be pitted against Italian Americans. So in future, 20 years down the line, we will see a different kind of wars, social wars, not criminal wars happen in the fight of the Columbus Day. I urge all of you, do not take any decision to further divide America. This is about celebrating indigenous people's life. Let's recognize them for what they need to be on a different day. And I Googled it. There are already some states recognize Indigenous Peoples Day in August and September, not on Columbus Day. So I urge you not to take any action to further divide.
At the microphone to my right.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. This is Mark Keys, 18 Steeplechase Circle. I agree with all the history here. I don't understand why we have to adopt a cancel culture attitude towards this. As the previous speaker just said, there is a movement to have an Indigenous Peoples Day, and I think it should be put somewhere in our United States culture. It does not have to replace an existing day that has significant benefits. Both dates should be in there in our calendar. Both can be, and some, as I said, states have already, in the previous speaker, adopted a date in the, I believe it's the third or fourth Friday in September. So that's it. Thank you very much.
At the center microphone, please.
Eileen Tatro, Oak Road. My pronouns are she, her. And I would like to come out in support of this motion, standing here in the land of the Pawtucket, the Massachusetts, the Nipmuc, and the Wabanaki Confederacy. I really feel strongly that we need to celebrate the land that we live on, the land that unfortunately we took from people before us. I'm an immigrant. My family's immigrant. My background doesn't get the same celebrations as Italian Americans do. I've never actually looked at Columbus Day as an Italian American Day. And it's surprising to me to hear it that way. If we're going to insist that it's an Italian American Day, where's the Polish American Day and the Indian American Day and the Chinese American Day and the Romanian American Day and, you know, Portugal American Day? You go pick them all, right? The other thing I just want to bring up here is that what I've heard over and over is microaggressions. If you don't know it, it's a term used for brief and commonplace daily verbal or behavior indignities, whether intentional or unintentional, and I hope some of these are unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative attitudes towards stigmatized or culturally marginalized groups. Those are the Indigenous Americans. Those are the people who I think we should be celebrating the land that we have taken from them. Thank you.
And to my left.
Michelle Martin, Meadow Lane. Did you know November is Native American Heritage Month? The day after Thanksgiving is this is a national month, I should have said, National Native American Heritage Day. We have these days, we should be acknowledging the days that exist. We don't need to adopt a new day.
And to my right, please.
Elizabeth Sawyer, Holly Lane. I would like to just bring some sense of time to the population of this area by original peoples. It began 20,000 years ago when the land submerged in a shallow sea between Alaska and Siberia opened up. So when we talk about indigenous people living here, we mean for about 19,000 years before it was discovered. So for me, the change, which I support, reflects that there were cultures here, not just the images we have in our mind from the pictures of indigenous people from the 1800s or 1600s, but for 19,500 years before that. We're the current occupants here. It has long been occupied. I support recognizing people have been here for about 20,000 years, and it wasn't discovered in 1492.
I'm going to take the remaining people at the microphone, and that'll be it. At the center microphone.
Hi, Emily Gilstrap, 17 Oak Road. I've just been really shocked to hear some of the reasons people want to continue to support Columbus Day. Columbus was not sent by the Italians. All due respect to Italian Americans, there are many great Italian people to celebrate. He was not sent by the Italians, he was sent by the Spanish. He wasn't even the first to arrive in this country, and I think the holiday is based on false pretenses. I'm an archaeologist, a former archaeologist. I've worked with Native Americans, and a lot of what I heard about their, savagery spoken about here today was just, I was just shocked to hear that. The use of controlled burning is actually a great horticultural technique. Do your research. Yes, a lot of what was talked about was a very Eurocentric focus. I agree with the idea that this land has been occupied by people for thousands of years, and if we're going to celebrate our country, my patriotic belief is that we should celebrate all people that have lived here. Please support this. I think it is appropriate to replace Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day. Thank you.
And to my left.
Marion Harmon, Old Colony Drive. I support Dr. Haramath's article, and for the reasons that I have, in my understanding, Columbus doesn't really have anything to do with the United States. He discovered the Caribbean islands, and why we adopted Columbus Day, I'm not entirely sure. He wasn't here. But Native Americans and indigenous people have been here ever since the Great Glacier receded. And this was their land, and they were displaced by Europeans. And we all have that shame, really, to bear. But one of the things we can do now is to recognize the importance of Native American cultures and how they were the discoverers of the United States and the Americas.
And to my right.
My name's Alexander Owen, and I'm from Pilgrim Drive. I'm a senior at Westford Academy, and I just wanted to say I'm in support of the article for Indigenous people today. Just because Columbus really is a horrible person, even if you're thinking about go to the center one. Yeah.
Technical difficulties. He's coming to the center mic.
Thank you. Even if you are thinking about the argument of presentism, there were people in Columbus's time who did not believe he was a good person. The greatest example is Bartolomeu de las Casas, who wrote against Columbus, complaining of the horrible things he was doing to the native Taino people. And also, very importantly, the King and Queen of Spain, who arrested Columbus for his mistreatment of the indigenous people and were transporting him back to Spain for trial for his crimes. He helped support slavery. If the indigenous people did not bring him enough gold or silver to him, he would lop off their hands until they did. He started and supported child sex rings among his men. He is not someone we should be honoring with this holiday, and that's why I believe we should have indigenous peoples with this article passed. Thank you.
And are you at the microphone there to my left?
I am. Arnold Price, 19 Oak Hill Road. I think I may be the last person who you were going to recognize,
Yes.
but I was going to move the question.
Okay.
I'm appreciative of the history lesson we've all had here today.
We're there anyway, so I don't think we need to vote to move the question. All right. All in favor of the motion made by Dr. Haramath to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day, please hold your cards in the air. Put them down, please. All opposed? I'm sorry, we'll have to count that. Doesn't feel like it's getting any warmer, does it? Or is it just up here that it's cold? Yeah, we have a breeze up here. So it's not hot air. All right, everyone in favor of the motion, please hold your cards in the air. Please keep your hands up while the count is going on, and everyone either stay on or off the field while wherever you are now, while the vote is being counted. All right, put your cards down, please. All opposed to the motion, please raise your hands with your cards in them. Please keep your cards up until the vote is complete. Please don't walk in or off the field while the vote's being counted.
What he does is have two people vote the same section, and they check the numbers.
Right.
They take part of the section out.
Okay, put your cards down now and shake your arms out. The motion fails to achieve a majority. It's 108 yes to 111 no. I'm going to recognize the Senate microphone first, Dennis. Nope, you can stay there. It's just Nancy at the Senate.
Madam Moderator, Nancy Cook, 25 North Main. I'd like to make a request that we have a resolution to find a way to honor the indigenous people at this time.
Nancy, if you want to make a resolution, that's great. Just write something up and give it to me. I know Dennis has one in mind already. Dennis Galvin.
Dennis Galvin, 90 Concord Road. Madam Moderator, I would move that the Westford Town Meeting proclaim March 15th, which is Andrew Jackson's birthday, as Indigenous Peoples' Day in Westford, setting aside this day to reflect upon the unjust treatment of the Native American people, as well as the evil of racism and other forms of collective bigotry.
Is there a second to the motion? Okay, we've had a lot of discussion about this already. If people have specific questions they want to ask about the difference between this and what we discussed previously, please approach the microphone and do so. Sir, at the microphone to my right.
Marquise, 18 Steeplechase Circle. Why do we have to make this controversial with another holiday? I don't see a necessity to go down that road. It's pointless. I would much prefer we tie this to just a separate date with one issue, honoring Native Americans, not making it a contest between two existing traditions. And I take, I disagree with the way that that person was described in the history text. Thank you.
And again, to my right.
Kathy Lynch on Rush Road. I really think we should focus this more on the positive aspects of the indigenous peoples, rather than just saying all the horrible ills. I think we should slant it to recognize the positive. of both the Indigenous and Columbus Day. We all know we're imperfect. We all know we make mistakes, and we don't want to support that. I think we're all in agreement about that. But let's just make this, I agree with March 15th. That's fine with me. But let's make it positive.
At the left microphone.
So I propose we resolve that we will honor Indigenous People Day, but do not commit to do it right now. We don't have enough expertise or background to identify a day.
So Sorry, Hari, we now have a motion on the floor. Are you making an amendment to that motion?
Yes, I'm making an amendment, and the amendment would be the Westford Town Committee to resolve honoring the Indigenous Peoples Day at a day that would be later determined by the town officials or town governance.
All right, I'll need you to get that up here to me in writing, too. And while we're waiting for that, is there a second to that motion to amend? So we're discussing the amendment now, which is, one moment. Where's Hari? Oh, there he is. Hari, I'm actually going to ask if you would if you would be willing to hold your amendment and let us dispose of Dennis's motion first, and then if that, no matter which way that goes, you can make a new motion, just to keep things a little more clarified. Okay? All right. So we're now back to speaking about Dennis's motion to resolve a specific day to be designated as Indigenous Peoples Day. At the center microphone.
Emily Gilstrap, 17 Oak Road. I do not believe you can honor Indigenous peoples while continuing to celebrate those that have enslaved and committed genocide against them. I don't think it would be appropriate to, I don't know. I just don't think it would be appropriate to select a different day at this time.
And at the microphone in the rear.
Madam Moderator, I have a point of order. Alan Moyer, 69 Forest Road. In past town meetings, I believe I've learned that things that are not on the warrant cannot be used to bind the people, bind town meeting. Resolutions can be in the form of asking the Board of Selectmen to make recommendations at future town meetings, et cetera. I'm kind of weak on the exact rules here, but while I support Dennis Galvin's amendment, I think a point of order is appropriate here. I don't believe we can bind the town to anything that was not on the warrant.
This being a resolution from the floor, I believe we can vote on it. The mandatory or voluntary nature of it is something for the Board of Selectmen to decide. The microphone to the right.
Hi, my name is Ed Enos. I'm from Vinebrook.
Ave. I'm also part Cherokee, and I'd like to state that I've been listening to both sides of this argument. I do not support his resolution. I think before we talk about any date or changing any holiday, this town needs to get a much clearer education on the history of the indigenous people. I don't think people are really aware of the truths, the good, the bad, and the ugly of everything that happened in regards to the indigenous people.
At the center microphone.
Sure, Megan Eckroth, Timberley Lane. I wanted to ask a question, and I'm not sure how this works in the process of where we are with town
Well,
meeting.
ask me your question. I'll try and get the right person to answer it.
Thank you. I know in other towns, this has been a ballot question on a town ballot so that all registered voters can weigh in. Given that there are somewhere around 17,000 registered voters in our town, and there are about 219, I think, people that voted, I feel that this would be better served to make this decision on something like a town ballot. And so I'm curious what the process would be for that.
I think anyone can bring a resolution from the floor of town meeting, which is what's happened here. Again, I think I'll have town council address the issue of what the binding nature of such a motion would or wouldn't be.
Madam Moderator, through you to the previous speaker, in order to place a question on the ballot, 25 citizens could make that request of the Board of Selectmen to put a non-binding question on the ballot. And if the selectmen chose not to, and it has to be in an annual town election, if the selectmen chose not to do that, then you could gather, and don't hold me to this, but I think it's 10% of the registered voters could sign a petition that would force it on to the ballot. But that's only if it's non-binding. And so the question here is, what are you voting on? Are you voting on formally designating another date as Indigenous Peoples' Day? I'm not sure that's non-binding, but again, I'm also not sure what the effect of that would be, other than having, I do believe in the prior motion that failed, there was language that talked about how you would celebrate Indigenous Peoples' Day. I don't think in the maker of this motion did not specify. So I think we have to be careful here that we don't vote on something where there wasn't adequate notice to the voters, and that issue was raised by a previous speaker. So unless there's something in the motion that designates how this celebration is going to take place, I think it's a totally non-binding resolution, and you're free to vote on it, but I don't really think it's going to have any legal effect.
Thank you. So to that end, I would advise, or as a voter would like, that we do not vote on this resolution, that the vote on the article stands, and that voters can, if they so choose, bring forward a motion, because I think the intent of that was to actually replace the Columbus Day name recognition of that specific date to a future ballot question so that every voter had an opportunity to weigh in. Thank you.
And to the right.
Denali Delmar, 8 Dunstable Road. I would like to appreciate an effort to not whitewash what happened to the Native peoples in this country, what continues to happen to the Native peoples in this country. There's a lot of injustice. I think that should be addressed, but I agree with the former Native American person who says that we need more education before we can make any determination of a holiday or a date of reference. So I would like us to defeat this motion, although I appreciate Dennis's effort. I'd like to defeat it, and perhaps we can form a committee, yet another committee, to really examine perhaps what happened to the local peoples, what happened to the native peoples in Massachusetts, and then come back to the town and address it in the future when we're more educated. Thank you.
Dennis, did you want to respond?
Yeah,
And then I'm going to
sit down.
the folks at the microphone, and that'll be it.
There was, to Denali's remarks, there was a conflict, a serious conflict in this nation over certain things, for example, Native Americans and what happened to them. So I don't think we should walk away from that. I think it's very important to accept responsibility. The problem is that we have to make sure that we understand that it is not part of our national character. The reason that I chose Andrew Jackson was because that despite the fact that he was a great hero at the Battle of New Orleans, his presidential administration was marked as a purveyor of slavery and basically racism. And his most egregious act was the Indian Removal Act of 1832, in which passed and forcibly removed the Cherokee and Creek Indians and other tribes west of the Mississippi so they could open land up for slavery and for plantations. And I want to note that the Massachusetts delegation in Congress, along with many of the northern states, fought vigorously to be able to oppose that, but because of the 3/5 compromise and the overabundance of legislators in the South, because of that compromise, they were not able to sustain that. I just wanted that on record. Thank you.
Okay. To the right.
Hi. Oh, that's me, right? Valerie Young, for Marie Ann Drive. I voted in support of the original motion, and I just wanted to suggest that maybe the newly formed Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee could review this and come up with something instead of on the fly here.
Thank you. In the center microphone.
Chris Sanders, Koala Bear Lane. Inclined not to vote for this, partly in the manner in which it was brought as a reaction to the citizens petition, which I feel was brought with forethought and information, education, not on the fly. So I won't be voting for this, and would like to also, I was going to also say what Valerie said, which was we now do have a town DEI, and this seems like a perfect opportunity for a town group to sink their teeth into this and educate us all.
And to the left.
Hi, Arnold Price, 19 Oak Hill. I agree with the previous two speakers that we just don't have enough education to really make a decision, and we do have the Town Equity Committee. I think this is a job for them, so to speak. I would like to see the resolution taken off the table, yeah, I would just like to see it removed. I don't think we can do it on the fly either.
Are you making a motion to table the resolution?
I would like to see the resolution withdrawn. I don't know what the exact, I mean, the best thing I would do is vote no, I guess.
You can make a motion to refer the resolution to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, if that's what you're trying to do.
That's what I would like to do.
All right, and that takes precedence over the pending resolution. So is there a second to that motion? All right. So does everybody understand that now what we have on the floor is a motion to refer Dennis Galvin's motion to establish March 15th as Indigenous Peoples' Day to the existing Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee? So, as Town Council points out, we've had plenty of debate, so we're going to move to the vote. All in favor of referring the Indigenous Peoples' Day resolution to the Town Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, please hold your cards in the air. Okay, put them down, please. All opposed? The referral passes. It's not unanimous. Do you have a point of order?
Yes, a point of order. The motion we just addressed was to refer Mr. Galvin's resolution to the committee.
Correct.
Not the original Indigenous peoples. It was misstated. I just wanted to correct that.
All right. Let's see. No, because that failed. Okay, we'll go on to Article 12. Jody Ross?
Angela?
Somebody calling me? Oh, I'm sorry, Mark Koss. Do you have a point of order?
I do. I was here before. So where are we? I think there's a severe lack of clarity right now.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So we voted on the original resolution brought by Dr. Haramath, and that did not pass. Then Dennis made a motion to resolve that Indigenous Peoples Day be recognized on March 15th. In the course of that debate, another gentleman made a motion to refer that resolution to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee in town. The motion to refer was seconded, and it passed. So Dennis's resolution to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day on March 15th has now been referred to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee.
Okay, so I have a point of order.
Okay.
So that committee reports into both the school committee and the Board of Selectmen. So what is the obligation? What are the next steps as it relates to that referral so that everybody understands what that means? I don't believe, unless the school committee and the Board of Selectmen vote to continue to do that, that the referral means much at this point.
Well, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee has been given a charge by the school committee and the Board of Selectmen, and now town meeting has referred this question to them as well. Town meeting has the authority to refer a question to a committee.
That reports to two other committees. So I'd like some clarification from the town council, please.
Yep. Okay, town council confirms that the town meeting has the authority to refer a question to an existing committee, and it doesn't affect the appointing committees at all.
All right, last point of order, please. So has the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee been sworn in as of yet, and are they officially considered a committee?
The town clerk confirms that several of them have been sworn in. Okay.
Point of order?
Yep.
A gentlelady mentioned bringing it to the ballot, bringing the original question to the ballot. Is that something that we can move to bring before the DEI committee instead of?
This body cannot do that. I think town council explained that a number of citizens can request either that the Board of Selectmen put it on the ballot, or a larger number of citizens can get a citizen's question on the ballot.
And that would take place outside of town meeting. I just need
That's outside of town meeting. Town meeting doesn't have the authority to put this on the ballot.
Thank you.
Okay. Is everybody clear on what we did and where we are now? Any other questions? All right, then we will move to Article 12, Jody Ross, Town Manager.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. This is, Article 12 is a citizen's petition, and the petitioner has asked for the meeting to dismiss this article. So I make a motion to dismiss Article 12.
All right. All in favor of dismissing Article 12, please raise your cards in the air. Please wait till we finish the vote. Okay, put your cards down, please. Can't hear you. You have to go to the center mic. Mm-hmm.
Was this the one about a liquor license near our neighborhoods?
I'm sorry, you didn't identify yourself or tell me where you lived, so I couldn't answer that question.
Elisa Nakashian, Holzberg, Betty Lane.
Thank you.
Yes, this was for an additional, or for a new restaurant pouring liquor license to be located at 478 Groton Road.
Okay, so this was already brought to us, correct? We have the opportunity to vote on it if we want to.
Yes, and the petitioner has asked for it to be dismissed, and I made that motion.
Well, what if we want to vote on it and deny it?
You can vote no, that it's not dismissed.
I'd like us to vote on it because...
We are going to vote on it.
No, you misunderstand what I'm asking.
Sorry.
I don't want to dismiss it. Now that it's on the warrant, I would like us to have an opportunity to discuss it and vote against it so that it's clear that we don't want bars in our neighborhood right there.
Are there any other questions or comments? All right, what we are voting on is a motion to dismiss Article 12. All in favor, if we don't dismiss Article 12, then we will be, what would happen if, 1 second. Sorry. So if we don't dismiss Article 12, then any voter can make a vote, a positive motion to ask for the additional liquor license. All right, all in favor, everybody clear? I think I am. All in favor of dismissing Article 12, please raise your cards in the air. Put them down, please. All opposed to dismissing Article 12? It's unanimous. Article 12 is dismissed. Okay, it is 12:01. I think it's time to break for lunch, so we can all go home and warm our feet. So we'll break until 1:20. And please remember to bring back your orange cards. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Can I get a motion to return?
No, I want to make a motion.
Oh, okay, sorry, point of order.
Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to keep this going and not take a break at this time.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or discussion? At the rear microphone.
Can I ask why he doesn't want to break right now? Because there's a lot of articles on the table. It would be one thing if we were close to finishing, but it doesn't seem like we're close to finishing.
Well, I think I'll accept that as a comment, not necessary to respond. I think we get what you're saying. Anything else? Okay. So, all in favor of going on, continuing on with the rest of the articles, please raise your cards in the air. All right, all opposed? I'm sorry, I can't count that. We'll try it. Everybody who's in favor, please stand up and hold your cards in the air. If you're in favor of going on, continuing on. Okay, please sit down. Those who would like to break for lunch now, please stand up and raise your cards in the air. That doesn't pass. These people want to break. What do you think? Yeah. Okay, sit down, please. The majority wants to break for lunch, so that's what we'll do. All right, so we're coming back at 1:20, and please remember your cards. If you come back and you have your card with you, you don't have to check in again, and you can come in through the gate where the ambulance is, and we'll see you at 1:20.